To pave the way for my elder sister who was a noble consort, my parents sent me to the bed of the 9,000-year lord. A 9,000-year lord, Adrian Blackwood, held immense power and influence throughout the court and the country, yet he was heartless and ruthless, without exception. All the women who were sent to curry favor with him were rolled up in straw mats and thrown into the mass graves. However, later on, my elder sister, Violet Montague, failed in the palace power struggles. She was demoted to a commoner and confined in the cold palace, but I became the apple of Adrian Blackwood's eye. I had luxurious carriages, fine horses, beautiful clothes, and delicious food. Everyone envied my good fortune. She was driven mad with anger. She killed me out of hatred. But we were both reborn together on the eve of entering the palace. This time, Violet Montague insisted on becoming Adrian Blackwood's concubine, and I took her place. I was carried into the palace in a small sedan chair and became a noble lady. On the eve of entering the palace, Violet Montague was still clamoring to be Adrian Blackwood's concubine. I heard that she had been groomed to be a palace consort since childhood. She was virtuous, kind, and her reputation spread throughout the capital. Mother, I don't want to enter the palace. I want to marry the 9,000-year lord. In the main hall, teacups were shattered all over the floor as Violet Montague made a great commotion. My stepmother, Claire Morgan, held her hand, and it trembled slightly. Everyone in the capital knew that Adrian Blackwood, a 9,000-year lord, held power that overshadowed both the court and the public. He was enchanting and romantic. Yet due to his physical deformity, he took pleasure in torturing women. I have a past with the 9,000-year lord in his heart, and different from other women. Violet Montague took out a small jade pendant from her sleeve. This is a token. When the 9,000-year lord sees this, he will surely treat me well. He won't bear to let me be his concubine. We will be together for a lifetime, just the two of us. When I saw that green jade pendant, I instinctively touched my neck, but I found nothing there. She really acted quickly. I silently sighed in my heart. Besides, Violet Montague glanced at me with a hidden threat. Aren't there still Isabel and Over? My stepmother gave me an unfriendly look. I meekly lowered my eyes and replied obediently, I'll follow my sister's arrangement. In this new life, Violet Montague was still as stupid as ever. In the previous life, she only saw me enjoying great success and thought I had found a good husband, but she didn't know that Adrian Blackwood was a complete madman. Because of this jade pendant, I was almost strangled to death by him. Since she was so eager for Adrian Blackwood, I just hoped that she would be lucky enough to enjoy such good fortune. A small sedan chair swayed gently on the way to the palace. I closed my eyes and took a short rest in a trance. I dreamed of some past events again in the previous life, when Violet Montague was confined in the cold palace. I went to see her for the last time. I didn't want to go at first, but she had a relic of my mother with her. It was a zoo and JT, complex embroidered pattern that my mother had spent her whole life weaving. She even went blind in the process and only just managed to finish it. In the abandoned cold palace, Violet Montague had completely lost her from her elegance. She was dressed in roughened plain clothes, with her hair disheveled and her face dirty. In contrast, I was being pampered like a precious pearl by Adrian Blackwood. I wore silken jewels, with my hair styled beautifully and my face adorned. At just one glance, Violet Montague went crazy. After leading me into the side hall, she set fire to it. Why you, Ray, clearly a lowly daughter. I'm the legitimate one. She glanced at the brocaded sleeves of my clothes with hatred in her eyes. How can you be worthy? It's you who stole my life. Light smoke billowed, and the tongues of fire licked at the hem of my skirt. Violet Montague choked my neck, her face contorted with rage. Your mother destroyed the lifelong union of my parents. You, Ray, just like your mother, and have also ruined my life. Bitch, I'll kill you. I used all my strength to break free from her, but I was pinned down by a fallen painted beam. The flames landed on Violet Montague, She let out a scream and rolled on the ground. Still shouting about the superiority of legitimate and the inferiority of children, the palace hall collapsed. In the last moment, before losing consciousness, a piece of purple cloth stained with dust suddenly appeared in front of my eyes. Like an illusion, Adrian Blackwood was very cleanly inclined and regarded me as a plaything. I thought he wouldn't come to save me, but then I heard his voice. Isabella Ova. It was full of fear and trembling. Hazy water droplets fell on my face. The 9,000-year Lord, who was always cruel and ruthless, was at a loss like a child for a moment. He was wrong. I was really wrong, Isabella Nova. Don't leave me. I blinked slowly, and my cheeks were wet. A hit wasn't an illusion. Could a madman also cry? I smiled and stuffed the zoo and JT into his arms. Here you are, I said hoarsely. From now on, we're even. And there will be no more connection between us. We will never meet again in this life and the next. The small sedan chair stopped abruptly. I lost my balance and woke up with a start. What had happened? I quietly lifted the side curtain with just one look. My face changed color. Coming towards me was Adrian Blackwood's pale noon. The palace path was long, but we met here on this narrow road. The sedan chair bearers bowed their heads and stepped aside, waiting for the other party to pass first. I also lowered my head, holding my breath and praying that this powerful figure would leave quickly. Just as the magnificent pale noon was about to pass by, the person leaning on it leisurely opened his mouth and said, "Stop." My breath caught in my throat, and I heard faint footsteps outside. "Who's in there?" the sedan chair bearer explained in a panic. This is the newly promoted noble consort, the legitimate daughter of Henry Morgan. Henry Morgan's legitimate daughter? For some reason, Adrian Blackwood's voice suddenly turned cold. "I've heard so much about you then. Let me have a good look at this noble lady." His tone was unfriendly. Down. I clenched my hands and remained silent. I knew all too well that this was a precursor to Adrian Blackwood's anger. Violet Montague had been well behaved before getting married. When had she gotten on his bad side? Seeing that I didn't move, Adrian Blackwood smiled slowly, like a snake spitting out its tongue. Her ladyship really has a big air. Outside the beaded curtain, that strange purple figure was getting closer. A pale and slender hand pushed aside the beaded curtain and was about to lift it up. Suddenly, a long announcement came from behind. "His Majesty the Emperor is here." Adrian Blackwood's hand stopped, and he had to pull it back. Everyone quickly knelt down on the ground. I pursed my lips and hesitated for a moment before lifting the beaded curtain to pay my respects, but I saw the young emperor on the imperial carriage gently shaking his head at me. "Don't come out." I was stunned for a moment and obediently sat back. Adrian Blackwood looked at the sky and was the first to speak out. "This hour, Your Majesty should be in the imperial study room listening to the imperial tutor's lecture on the classics." The emperor hung his head under his scolding and admitted his mistake honestly. "Eunuch in charge, this is just a what-I'm escape for me." The lamp crackled and flashed. Leonardo De Luca supported his chin with his hand and looked at me by the couch with a leisurely expression. Seeing my confused look, he smiled. "Didn't the palace etiquette instructors teach you the rules of serving the emperor at night?" "No," I thought silently. The one that the Morgan family had been training since childhood and preparing to send to the palace was already planning to crawl into the bed of the 9,000-year lord. I was about to prevaricate when Leonardo De Luca slowly spoke again. "My beloved consort, it seems that you have a close relationship with the eunuch in charge." This was probably what he really wanted to say tonight. "Your Majesty has misunderstood." I wept pitifully. "I have a clean and pure relationship with the eunuch in charge. We've only met once." Leonardo De Luca stared at me for a long time. I wasn't sure if he believed me or not, so I had to keep forcing out tears. After a long while, he laughed softly. "You're crying so hard, don't be afraid. I won't eat you." The next moment, he waved his sleeve and extinguished the candle on the table. He raised his eyebrows and looked at me sitting there in a daze. I didn't miss the fleeting playfulness in Leonardo de Luca's eyes before the candle went out. The next morning, as usual, I had to pay my respects to the Empress. The Empress, Eleanor Shepherd, came from the Shepherd family and was the granddaughter of the great general, Marcus Shepherd. The Shepherd family was extremely prestigious, with generations of high-ranking officials. More than half of the officials in the court were disciples of the Shepherd family. Emperors had changed one after another, but the empresses of all dynasties were from the Shepherd family. The Shepherd family held power over the court and remained unshakable. In Leonardo de Luca's reign, he supported the eunuchs to counterbalance the Shepherd family, and thus Adrian Blackwood, with his overwhelming power, emerged. In the previous life, Violet Montague had been defeated by Eleanor Shepherd. Eleanor Shepherd was by no means a kind person. As soon as I crossed the threshold, someone came out from the inner hall. It was Alice Green, who served Eleanor Shepherd. This must be the noble consort newly favored by His Majesty? She smiled gently. Unfortunately, Her Majesty the Empress has suffered a recurrence of her cold illness today. The imperial physician is inside examining her. The noble consort will have to wait for a while. But since it's the time for paying respects, and the ancestral rules cannot be abolished, please wait outside on your knees. Noble consort. This was Eleanor Shepherd's way of showing me who was in charge. The palace path outside the cunning palace was bustling with people soon. Everyone in the palace would know that on the first day of entering the palace, the noble consort had been severely punished by the Empress. I had no choice but to kneel outside the palace obediently. Just after a quarter of an hour passed, there was a faint rumble of thunder in the distance. Then it began to rain patter. The maids and eunuchs whispered among themselves. I thought this noble consort was so powerful. She is still completely subdued by our Empress, isn't she? I heard that His Majesty personally went to pick her up yesterday and stayed in our palace all night. No wonder the Empress is angry. She's such a seductress. Let's see if she still dares to seduce His Majesty in the future. I wiped the rain off my face and suddenly realized Leonardo de Luca was using me as a pawn. The maids chattered for a while. Then, their conversation suddenly changed. Have you heard? Yesterday, the 9,000-year lord offered a fortune of 10,000 gold as a betrothal gift to propose to the daughter of the Morgan family. He even invited her to the palace for tea today, as if to confirm their words. The next moment, a small sedan chair appeared not far away. When it passed by me, it suddenly stopped. The beaded curtain was lifted, revealing Violet Montague's smiling face. I saw someone kneeling here from a distance. You look so pitiful. I wondered who it was. It's you, sister. She was an unmarried lady, so she covered the lower half of her face with a white veil, and the eyebrows and eyes that were exposed were newly made up. Dressed in my former style at first glance, I had a strange feeling as if looking at myself in the mirror. I didn't know what kind of pill she had taken, and even her voice was almost the same as mine. Violet Montague looked at me, soaked by the heavy rain, and laughed heartily. Sister, you really have a great ability. You offended the Empress on the first day of entering the palace. The next words were spoken so softly that only the two of us could hear. Isabella Nova, do you think you're already very pitiful? Considering that we're sisters, I'll tell you in advance, you still have more suffering to come. She covered her mouth and giggled. And I will soon be the wife that the 9,000-year lord has offered a fortune for. Are you envious? It's no use being envious. Who asks you to be just a daughter without good fortune? Violet Montague left triumphantly. Not long after she left, another palanquin stopped beside me. It was Adrian Blackwood. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw him looking at me with great interest. Violet Montague, he said leisurely, do you know what the consequences are for offending the Directorate of Ceremonies in this palace? I lowered my head and remained silent. The rain dripped down my cheeks and fell on my chin. Adrian Blackwood smiled deeply, but his tone was cold. I will make your ladyship's life a living hell. I reacted slowly and realized Adrian Blackwood had also been reborn, and he had mistaken me for someone else. I was a bit dazed. Did he hate Violet Montague so much that he was going to avenge me from the previous life? That day, I knelt in the rain for half an hour. When I thought it was about time, I leaned to one side and fell down. As soon as I fell, the Empress's cold illness was cured. Alice Green smiled amiably and held an umbrella to help me up from the rain. The imperial physician said that Her Majesty the Empress needs to rest quietly, so she won't be receiving guests today. Her Majesty the Empress has already received your regards, noble consort. Please go back. When passing by the imperial garden, there were people sitting opposite each other in an octagonal pavilion brewing tea. All what TSKU. Be been bullied like this. The candlelight was as small as a bean. Leonardo de Luca was trimming the candle wick in front of the table. Are you awake? He didn't even raise his eyebrows and said inferently, if you're awake, apply the medicine yourself. He was cold and distant, completely different from the previous night. Looking at him, I remembered something in the previous life. Violet Montague had been extremely favored after entering the palace. Everyone in the palace said that the emperor and the consort had a deep affection. But after Violet Montague was framed and deposed by the Empress, Leonardo de Luca didn't show any mercy at all. He withdrew from the relationship neatly and then welcomed the daughter of the Minister of Rights into the palace. In just a few days, it was another noble consort in the palace. So, my elder sister in the previous life and I in this life were just pawns for Leonardo de Luca to contain Eleanor Shepherd. I pawn that couldn't king the Empress was just a disposable piece. The intrigues in the palace seemed to be more complicated than the lives of my elder sister and me. I looked at the young emperor under the lamp and suddenly spoke. The imperial seal and treasures of the noble consort are just nominal. Leonardo de Luca's idle movement stopped, and a look of surprise flashed across his face. You reign not too stupid after all. I continued to negotiate with him. Could deal with the Empress. I want the power to assist in managing the 6 palaces. Leonardo de Luca was taken aback for a moment and then laughed softly. You've forgotten. My dear consort, I'm also a puppet emperor, only in name. Therefore, he leaned down. His jade crown was half tied up, and his loose black hair brushed against my cheek. It was a bit cold. If you want something, my dear consort, you have to fight for it yourself. The cold rain knocked on the window, and the candlelight flickered. I was silent for a while and then continued the negotiation. Fine, but I won't do a losing deal. When dealing with the Shepherd family, I naturally took the silver scissors from his hand and cut off the candle wick. I want the position of Empress. Leonardo de Luca was truly stunned this time. Why? I lowered my eyes and trimmed the candle without looking at him. Women in this world are like duckweeds in the water, always at the mercy of others. I don't want to be trampled on, so I have to strive for that high position. Leonardo de Luca smiled. Of course you can. I'm really looking forward to it. I looked up with tears in my eyes and suddenly froze. Those magnificent eyebrows and eyes were not unfamiliar. The person slightly lowered his head, and his gaze also stopped. I called out in a trembling voice, Brother Adrian. It was hard to describe the expression on Adrian Blackwood's face at that moment. He took a deep breath and turned to leave, but I recklessly grabbed his sleeve. Brother Adrian! I was anxious, like a person drowning, grabbing the last piece of driftwood. Brother, save me. I don't want to be killed by the night, Bowsenier Lord. His figure cries, but he didn't turn around. I thought he didn't recognize me, so I tugged at the small jade pendant around my neck and held it up high. It was a birthday gift he had given me. Brother Adrian Blackwood. I'm Isabella Nova. Don't you recognize me? My mother passed away when I was 8. She told me to take the ZUNJT. She had spent half her life embroidering and go to seek refuge with my father in the capital, who had abandoned us. Since then, I never returned to Jianghan. It had been over 10 years since I last saw him. He remained silent. After a long while, I heard his hoarse voice. You've mistaken me for someone else. He turned around and roughly pulled my hand down. My name is Adrian Blackwood. I was stunned, as if struck by lightning. How could this be? Brother Adrian Blackwood used to be a scholarly man, as gentle as the breeze and as clear as the moon. How could he have become the notorious 9,000-year lord? Adrian Blackwood. Adrian Blackwood! He whirled around suddenly. He grabbed the red string of the jade pendant around my neck, his expression turning terrifying. Dare to call that name again, and I'll strangle you. I opened my mouth, trying to find some crack in his cold expression, but there was none. The person in front of me had nothing in common with my brother Adrian Blackwood, except for his face. However, just when I thought I had really mistaken him, I stared blankly at the peach blossom branch in my hand. Adrian Blackwood was discarding me like a plaything, a burden. Yet, we had pledged our lives to each other long ago when we were just children. We had sworn to be together until old age. Adrian Blackwood had promised to treat me well for a lifetime. But, holding back my tears, I thought that Adrian Blackwood's promise meant nothing now as he was. And I woke up with a start from my dream. Leonardo De Luca was holding a lamp and looking at me, his fingertips brushed across the tear stains under my eyes. You're crying so hard. Did you have a nightmare? I just brushed his hand away and wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. It really had been a very long nightmare. You've been slacking off here for days. It's time to get to work, Leonardo De Luca said, rubbing his fingertips together. He got up lazily and looked back at me. You must perform well at tonight's grand palace banquet, my dear consort. I don't know what kind of spell your sister has cast on my eunuch in charge. He's been distracted. He grunted. Let's see if you, my dear consort, bring his mind back. Leonardo De Luca and I were like a decadent emperor and a seductive consort. Arriving late, the empress looked displeased. I pretended not to notice and smiled at her provocatively. The music of flutes, strings, and pipes filled the air. Adrian Blackwood was pouring himself wine on the other side. His lips were as red as vermilion, and he exuded an air of charm. He was like a demon emerging from the tales of the Kang Palace. Yet his gaze was carefully and preciously fixed on someone. I dared not overstep, dared not discourage. I turned my head and saw Violet Montague snuggling beside my stepmother at the banquet. Violet Montague had been in the limelight recently. Once the news of Adrian Blackwood's proposal to her spread, Isabella Nova became the most glorious lady in the entire capital. A 9,000-year lord had never shown such affection for anyone before. Noble ladies who had once looked down on the Morgan family's status were now currying favor with her, making her feel elated. She had once hated my mother for destroying the lifelong union of her parents. Now, because she didn't want to marry with the title of a daughter, she had asked her father to elevate my mother, who was just a fleeting lover and not even a concubine, to the status of a parallel wife. It had all come so easily to her. Violet Montague noticed my gaze and defiantly looked back, her eyes filled with uncontrollable pride. The music stopped, and there was a deathly silence. It was no secret that the empress had no children. Over the years, the children of the palace concubines either had miscarriages or died young. None of them had survived. Probably Leonardo De Luca was behind it, I thought inferently. After all, for a puppet emperor, the younger the heirs, the easier they were to control. The empress having no children was perfect for Leonardo De Luca. The empress came to her senses and her eyes landed on my belly, filled with ecstasy. As the mistress of the 6 palaces, it's my duty to take care of you, sister, she said. I looked at her innocently. Then, I'll have to trouble you, sister. The wine was refilled, and the banquet resumed. Sensing that gaze, I calmly turned my head and met Adrian Blackwood's eyes. The candles on the 9-branched lamp burned brightly, instantly illuminating my eyebrows and eyes. I raised my glass in salute and smiled. Eunuch in charge. Long time no see. It was hard to describe Adrian Blackwood's expression at that moment. His eyes widened in disbelief, and his gaze flickered. Then he suddenly looked at Violet Montague at the banquet. Eunuch in charge. Why are you silent? I swayed my wine cup and added fuel to the fire with a smile. Could it be that you looked down on me? Adrian Blackwood took a deep breath and staggered slightly as he stood up. The eunuch in charge is drunk, I teased nonchalantly. His eyes were filled with a cold resentment. Yet he still pretended to be okay and raised his wine cup to toast me from afar. To the noble consort. I laughed and was about to drink when the nervous empress stopped me. Sister, you're with child. How can you drink wine? Adrian Blackwood's face grew even colder. Then, I'll replace the wine with tea, I said, looking into his cold eyes and smiling. To the eunuch in charge. Seeing my interaction with Adrian Blackwood, Violet Montague became uneasy. She took a deep breath, picked up her wine cup, and gracefully walked up to Adrian Blackwood. Eunuch in charge, Violet Montague said shyly. I, Isabella Nova, offer you a toast. Adrian Blackwood stared at her for a moment and then suddenly raised his hand. No one saw how the dagger in his sleeve enshitted. All they saw was a flash of light, and Violet Montague's white veil that covered her face whirled and fell to the ground. Violet Montague's eyes widened in horror. Eunuch, eunuch. She couldn't finish her words. The next moment, Adrian Blackwood used the tip of the dagger to lift her chin. I recognized that dagger. It was made of cold iron and extremely sharp. Now it was pressed against Violet Montague's delicate chin, drawing a trace of blood. A fake imitating the real. Adrian Blackwood said coldly, You're not my wife. The people at the banquet all looked over in surprise. Violet Montague was so ashamed and angry that she panicked. How could this be, with all the proper wedding ceremonies and the whole capital knowing that I'm the woman you're going to marry properly? She sobbed, and tears streamed down her face, like beads off a broken string. The once happy banquet was now in chaos. Using the excuse of changing clothes, I wandered around the palace. The music had stopped, and the lights were dim. Adrian Blackwood followed me unhurriedly. I decided not to beat around the bush and turned around with a smile. Why are you out here too? Eunuch in charge? Was it you who was kneeling in front of the cunning palace that day? I nodded. His eyes suddenly welled up with tears. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Isabella Nova. He opened his mouth, his voice hoarse. I didn't know it was you. Why is it you? I looked at him and said teasingly, Because I want to be the empress. Adrian Blackwood's hand trembled suddenly. Don't you want me any more, Isabella Nova? With a smile on my lips, I slowly pulled back my sleeve that he had been gripping, and Violet Montague, the current noble consort, eunuch in charge, please behave yourself. Adrian Blackwood didn't speak. He seemed truly heartbroken. But when he looked up again, the look of despair was gone. He let out a soft laugh. So, you really want to be the empress, our Isabella Nova? He whispered in my ear, his voice seductive. I'm afraid you can't do it just by yourself, Isabella Nova. He looked back at him, pretending not to know. Please enlighten me, eunuch in charge. Adrian Blackwood smiled too, like a beautiful but dangerous snake. If you want to be the empress, your ladyship, you should come and beg me. The next moment, he knelt down in front of me, and reverently pressed his forehead against the sleeve of my dress embroidered with phoenixes. You want to deal with Eleanor Shepherd, and I can help the emperor contain the Shepherd family in the court. Adrian Blackwood came late that night, to dampen the hem of his clothes, and a layer of mist covered his eyes. He didn't enter the hall but stood by the window and softly asked, Your ladyship, are you well today? I could still smell the faint scent of blood on him. He had been killing people lately. I was silent for a moment. If the eunuch in charge is well, I'm naturally well too. Adrian Blackwood opened his mouth. I have committed many sins, so can I be compared with your ladyship? He paused and then added in a low voice, From now on, I won't enter the hall. I'm afraid I'll disturb the fetus in your ladyship's belly. I looked at him. Had you jealous, Adrian Blackwood? It was a sudden question, but he immediately understood what I meant. He was stunned. After a long while, I heard his reply, sounding confused and at a loss. I didn't know what he was thinking at that moment. Perhaps about his deformity. I thought, if that was considered a deformity, and I had taken the forbidden medicine and could no longer have children, so I was also a so-called deformed person. I smiled. The moon waxes and wanes, and it's not always full imperfection is common in this world. Look up, eunuch in charge. The moon was like a hook. I also smiled and looked into his dazed eyes. You shouldn't hold hatred, eunuch in charge. Winter gave way to spring. Counting the days, the baby in my belly should be about 5 months old. The Empress took a look at something and handed it to me. If you like it, sister, I'll give it to you. I was always envious of her things, and the Empress was used to it. I had taken quite a few jade pendants, tassels, and sackets from her. She thought I was stupid and was happy to pretend to be affectionate with me. Anyway, she just needed to wait a few more months and then take the child and get rid of the mother, so when the elk in the hunting ground rushed towards me wildly in full view of everyone, she didn't realize that I had set it up and that she was about to face great trouble. I fell to the ground in a sorry state, and blood kept flowing from my lower body, sucking through my lotus-colored palace dress. The scene was extremely tragic. Your Majesty, it hurt so much. A massive blood loss made my vision blurry. I leaned weakly into Leonardo Di Luca's arms, but I could clearly see Adrian Blackwood outside the crowd. There were ridges of blood on his face, and he was actually crying. Sister Empress, if you don't like me, you can punish me however you want, but why? Why did you harm my child? My child. My baby. The Empress gritted her teeth in hatred. You? How dare you slander me? They had already figured out the cause and effect as soon as I fell in a pool of blood. Why did you go this far? Adrian Blackwood looked at my pale face, his eyes full of pity, but he had no position to dissuade me. He opened his mouth, as if wanting to ask if I was in pain. It was the anniversary of my mother's death. According to the old customs of Jiangdan, instead of burning paper money, we would set afloat a water lantern. All the rivers, lakes, and seas in the world were connected, and the soul would drift with the lantern, eventually returning to the hometown in Jiangdan. I couldn't get out, so I tried to find a waterway in the palace that lead to the outer river. What are you looking for? The purple clothes he wore seemed to blend into the night. When he saw the water lantern in my hands, a look of surprise flashed in his eyes. Adrian Blackwood naturally knew what it was. He didn't say anything. The next moment, he tightened his grip on my waist. He said, Isabel and Ova, I'll take you out. By the moat, I stirred the water and carefully placed the lantern, and the small lantern floated away, carrying the soul back to its hometown. I couldn't remember my mother's face clearly anymore. I always dreamed of her sitting in front of the loom, day after day, weaving the pattern that I couldn't understand. Mother, I whispered in my heart. Later, I found my father, but he didn't remember my mother and me. He wasn't a worthy person. Don't weave the ZUNJT anymore, Mother. Adrian Blackwood stood behind me, watching the water lantern float away with me. He lowered his eyes several times, wanting to speak, but in the end, he couldn't say anything. Wait for me, he finally said. As soon as Adrian Blackwood left, a figure suddenly emerged behind me. TSK, I thought I was seeing things in the dark. A man suddenly grabbed my shoulder. He said the serious lie. Is the position of the imperial noble consort comfortable for you, your ladyship? I recognized him. This man was Sebastian Shepherd, the younger brother of Eleanor Shepherd. I had seen him at the Grand Palace banquet. I said softly, "He's coming." "Dream on, you mean that coward?" There was a sound of bones breaking. "He hidden dart flew through the air and pierced a bastion Shepherd's wrist. He let out a pig-like scream and collapsed to the ground. I'm the imperial uncle. How dare you touch me? I will support the imperial noble consort for the rest of her life." And next day, the court was in an uproar. Sebastian Shepherd's father joined with all the officials to submit a petition, condemning the tyranny and claiming that the country was in chaos. He smiled brightly. "Besides, I spared young Master Shepherd's arm, saving your face. Sebastian Shepherd's father is indignant and cursed. The eunuch is so arrogant." Adrian Blackwood wasn't angry. "What? Is this considered arrogance? There's more to come." No one saw how he unsheathed his sword. When everyone reacted, the tip of the cold sword was already there. The Emperor's spies were like a spider web in the dark. Unknowingly, they had spread over the Shepherd family's mansion. The ghosts lurking in the dark were waiting for the sound of thundering hoofs to wake them up. It was late at night, and the entire capital's army had gathered in the imperial city. I asked, "What about you, Adrian Blackwood?" He was stunned for a moment, and then comforted me in a low voice. "When it's dawn, open this door, and I'll be back." So I held the sword that Adrian Blackwood had left me unweighted by the door. Violet Montague had a crazy smile on her face. "I'm here to take your life." She had just escaped from the prison, and her body smelled of blood and decay. I looked down and saw that under the lifted sleeve, her skin had been cut off piece by piece, revealing the white bones. So I laughed and said, "My elder sister is the most beautiful woman in the capital. What kind of white-bone demon are you to dare to pretend to be her? By the way," I frowned and thought, "are you a legitimate or a daughter, you demon?" Violet Montague's movements froze. Taking advantage of her stunned moment, I threw the sword backward and nailed her dress to the ground. Violet Montague stared blankly at her. Armand suddenly went crazy. She pounced on me and bit my neck. "Isabella Ova, it's all your fault. It's all because of you." She laughed and cried, staring obsessively at the magnificent imperial noble consort's attire I was wearing. Yes, I want to live like this. Your Majesty also has a heart in the next life. I want to be an imperial noble consort too, Violet Montague murmured to herself. "Will you? And I can go back to the beginning." Another dagger suddenly slipped out of her sleeve. I lifted my eyelids slightly. I gently guided her hand. Ended her life. "You can definitely go back to the past, sister." I smiled tenderly. "But everyone is moving forward, and there's no one waiting for you there anymore." The sky was turning slightly pink. I opened the palace gate as promised. There was a man staggering towards me. Leaning on a sword, he was wearing strange purple clothes, but his eyes were gentle. "Isabella Nova," Adrian Blackwood said hoarsely. "I'm back." He kept his promise. He looked at me, pale from blood loss. A monarch's promise is precious. He bent down, reaching out to pull me onto the horse. "My empress." After the elimination of the powerful imperial relative on the maternal side, Adrian Blackwood fell seriously ill. The imperial doctors could only shake their heads. I sat by his bedside in a daze these days. I told him, "Isabella Nova and Adrian are the best in the world." I trembled, realizing he had cherished something I thought was trivial for years. I called him Adrian Blackwood many times. Never his true name. "Brother Adrian," I said tremblingly. "Isabella Nova is back. Want you play with me?" After a long while, his beautiful eyes opened. He smiled at me blankly. Tears streamed down my face. "Why cry? Did the Empress bully you?" "I must wake up to support you, but the rain was so heavy. I got lost and couldn't wake up. I dreamed of you as a child." Pulling my sleeve in the rain, he said, "I'm sorry." I didn't treat you well in the past life and this life. Hey, asked why he replied, Adrian had to destroy himself to survive as Adrian Blackwood. I insisted on hearing his story. After I left Jeongun, Adrian's father, an honest official, was wrongly involved in a case for refusing to collaborate with the corrupt. The whole clan was punished severely. Adrian, due to his good looks, was castrated and taken into the palace as a eunuch's apprentice. He was disheartened. The classic books taught him to be a gentleman, not how to be a eunuch. He learned his family had taken the blame for a shepherd disciple. Death is easy, no one wants you to live. I'll tell you how happy your enemies are, the old eunuch said. Adrian knelt, begging for mercy. From then on, he became Adrian Blackwood. He decided to be a devil seeking revenge for his family in the palace. He met the puppet temporarily Leonardo de Luca, who shared his hatred for the shepherds. They supported each other, and Adrian Blackwood rose to power. Though he was despised, he believed it was worth it, both for justice and revenge. Adrian told his story calmly, baring his soul. I wondered what ending he deserved. He covered my eyes, saying, Don't pity me. I'm lowly and incomplete. I said he could live no matter what. He asked if a miserable life was okay, and I said yes. He asked if he liked me. He trembled, saying he didn't dare. I told him we were the best in the world. Once Adrian recovered a bit, Leonardo de Luca took him to deal with court affairs one night. Leonardo came to tell me he'd make me empress. I asked about Adrian, but got vague answers. Trying on the empress's robe, I realized it was just a symbol of beauty. I didn't want this kind of life. I thought of Adrian, who knew too much. Leonardo might be suspicious of him. He overturned the chessboard, indicating a draw when the emperor crowned the empress. I wasn't there. Leonardo made Violet Montague empress, but I was Isabella Nova. He changed into a mate's close and ran. He didn't want to be found beyond the next gate. Adrian was waiting. We would go back to Tiananmen together.